Hi, everybody. My name is Linda Abraham. I'm the president and founder of Accepted, and I'm going to be presenting Get Accepted to Chicago booth this evening. I'm looking forward to sharing my 20 plus, almost 25 years of admissions experience with you during the next hour. But before we begin, I wanted to mention a few to-dos that will help you maximize your time here, and one that will help us improve future webinars. If you have not yet downloaded your webinar worksheet, you can please do so. I recommend it highly. You can find it in the handouts section of your control panel. And what I suggest is that you click on the link, download it, print it out, and use it to take notes and follow along. I'm also going to ask questions during the webinar and ask for your response, and they'll be open-ended kinds of questions. I ask that you put your answers in the question window, which I realize is a little bit paradoxical or not what you anticipate. You can also use the question window for your questions, and you can post them as we go along. We're going to have a Q&A at the end. I'm also going to ask some questions that may ask you to raise your hand and as an indication of whether you agree or disagree with something. So you can find the hand icon, two icons underneath the horizontal orange arrow on your control panel. Number 4, you can win. We're going to have a contest towards the end of the webinar based solely on content presented during the webinar. So stay tuned, and you could, like I said, you can win a prize. And then 5, when you leave, you're going to receive a brief survey. Please fill it out. We use your responses to improve these webinars and also sometimes to create new ones. Now let's test your hand-raising skill. How many of you are here because business school, and specifically Chicago booth, will whisk you on your way to the career of your dreams? If the answer is yes, please raise your hand. Okay, so most of you have found the hand icon and are here for the right reasons. That's good. Great. Last housekeeping item, and the participant's favorite. Accepted has a special for today's webinar registrants, and I'm going to tell you about it right now so that you aren't anxiously waiting till the end. You can save $100 off any non-rush MBA service order over $1,000. Coupon code MBA100, and the URL is accepted.com/MBA services. It ends December 10th, so you have 5 days to decide what you want, to contact us, get details, whatever it is that you need. And again, I'll repeat this at the end, or towards the end of the webinar. I always like to start my webinars by learning a little bit about my audience. So in the question window, could you please tell me where you're located? City and state if you're in the United States, and city and country if you're outside the United States. Madison, Wisconsin. Melbourne, Australia. My daughter-in-law is from Melbourne. Chicago, Illinois. Chicago, Illinois. Okay. District of Columbia. All right. Anybody from Los Angeles? Houston, Texas. Nobody from LA. Anybody from California? Maybe you're still coming late. I guess it's still the workday here, so it might be a little bit more difficult for Californians. Okay, let's move on. Now I'd like to learn where you're at in the application process. Okay. How many of you have already applied round 1? Applied round 1 to some schools and plan to apply round 2 to others? Planning to apply round 2 and round 3, or planning ahead for next year? Okay. Okay, in this case, if you can click on the appropriate option on your monitor, I think that will register your votes. Okay, and so with 81% having voted, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I'm going to close the poll. Actually, it's 85%. And we have 0% already applied. That's fine. And 6% applied round 1 and round 2. 47% are planning to apply round 2 and 3, and 47% planning ahead to next year. So planning ahead to next year is very similar to this morning's. Planning to apply round 2 and 3, not having applied at all yet, is much greater this evening. Okay, it's interesting. I'll think about what that means in a minute, a little later. And next poll is, how committed are you really to Chicago booth? Already did, which probably will be 0 because nobody applied round 1. Definitely, maybe, and doubt it. are the options. Again, the options are definitely, maybe, and doubt it. We're at 90% having voted. Fantastic. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to close the poll and share the poll. And it's 72% definitely, 28% maybe, and 0% doubt it. You're also a more definite group than this morning's group. Okay, last question for now, and that is, how many of you are in the following fields? Financial services, consulting, high-tech, healthcare, or other. Just choose the one that you feel is most appropriate. Again, the options are financial services, consulting, high-tech, healthcare, or other. We're at 71% having voted. Can we get it over 80? You've been a fantastic audience in terms of your participation in the other polls. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. We're up to 81%. Great. Okay. So 29% financial services, 6% consulting, 24% high tech, 6% healthcare, and 35% other. That's actually pretty similar to this morning. Somewhat greater number in financial services, lower number in consulting, but otherwise pretty similar. Okay, so I forgot to mention what the prize will be for the winner of the contest that I talked about a minute ago. It'll be a 15-minute consultation with me, okay? Now, the plan for the remainder of the webinar, about the next 45 minutes, is to go through the 4 key elements in my 4-part framework for MBA acceptance and apply that framework specifically to Chicago Booth. This is a comprehensive approach to the application process. You can use the strategy framework on other top programs also, but the focus tonight will be Chicago Booth and tactics that will help you optimize your application. I'm also going to issue several warnings and caveats in the course of the webinar, and the first one's coming right now. You're not going to get in by putting on some makeup, using spin, or even magic. What you need to do is submit a substantive application that shows that you have competitive qualifications and an effective presentation of those qualifications. In other words, you need to demonstrate fit. Your overriding aim is to show that you belong at Chicago Booth. Now, before I start giving you my opinion on how to do that, I'd like to hear from you how you intend to do that. And that would be in the question window. How do you intend to show that you belong at Booth? To show how the curriculum helps you in getting goals long and short, good. Strong recommendations, that will definitely help. I also have to apologize if I mispronounce anybody's names. Anybody else want to tell me how you're planning to show that you belong at Chicago Booth? Through applying to Booth scholars and demonstrating that the delayed aspect will help me greatly. Okay. Professional growth, very good, Darren. Excellent. That's going to be really important. Network, a little less important. Okay. On some level, my question is a little bit, and Matthew says, would already being in Chicago and wanting to stay here long-term demonstrate fit? It can be a tiny component of fit. It definitely can be a tiny component, but it doesn't, there has to be a lot more to it than that, because otherwise the entire city of Chicago could say, we want to be at Chicago Booth. So it has to be more than that. It can be a tiny component, but more than that. All right. So for Booth is actually pretty clear about what it's looking for. It says it boils down to curriculum, community, and career. In terms of my 4-part framework, the first element, and you'll see that there's a lot of parallels between mine and theirs. Number 1 is demonstrate you can do the work. That's the first key. Do the work and excel. And indeed, one of Booth's stated criteria is curriculum, and a sub-item is academic preparedness. So you need to show that you can handle the curriculum in terms of your academic preparedness, intellectual curiosity, and communication skills. The easiest way to show that is through your undergraduate transcript and test score. Ideally, you want to be at or above the averages for accepted students for both grades and test scores. But that doesn't always happen. And what can you do if you're not? How can you convince Chicago to accept you with, let's start with below average grades? Well, realize that averages, in Chicago's case, 3.6 for the class that entered in 2018, are what they are because some were accepted with below average grades and others with above average grades. And you can assume that roughly half fell in the below average category. Obviously, it's not exact, but it's typical. However, the farther away you are below average, and if you combine both low grades and low test scores, then the less likely it is that you can effectively convince them that you can do the work and excel. If you're concerned about your undergraduate GPA, please listen to the podcast that's on your screen, and we'll be sending out all the URLs that I refer to in the webinar, so you don't have to worry about that, where I give 5 suggestions for mitigating the impact of a low undergraduate GPA. If your quant skills are weak and you're the proverbial poet, but your grades are good, consider something like MBAmath.com, quant courses at a local college, and I would consider statistics for business, calculus if you have the prereqs and remember them, Econ 1, Accounting 1, to be all excellent classes to take and kind of get those quantitative muscles working again. Another option is HBX Core. But you need to show that you can handle demanding quantitative coursework and also show that you're preparing yourself for Booth. And realize that Booth is a particularly demanding and rigorous program quantitatively. All MBA programs are quantitative. There's no two ways about it. But on the scale, Booth is higher up. A high test score can mitigate a low GPA. For the top 10, including Booth, you want to ideally be at the 80th percentile in both quant and verbal, whether your grades are good or below average. Now, does that mean that if you're at the 79th percentile, you're out? No, absolutely not. That's a guideline I just gave, kind of a goal. But again, the farther away you are from that kind of ideal, the harder it is, the harder time you're going to have in showing them that you can do the work. If you're considerably below, either on verbal or quant, consider a retake. If you're not sure whether to retake, then I would say, please see this resource. I'm not going to go through it here and now because I want to get to other material. And again, I gave a whole webinar on the topic. So your ability to do the work is generally, but not exclusively, evident in your transcript and test scores, the so-called objective elements of your application. Sometimes, if you have very demanding work experience, you can show there that, let's say, your quant scores are not indicative of your real ability, but for most of you, it's going to boil down to your grades and test score. Somehow, some way, you need to show you can do the work effectively and not struggle with either basic math or communications. That's key number 1. That will open the door. Key number 2, have a clear, realistic idea why you want an MBA from Booth and how you intend to use it. Now, career is the last of Booth's evaluative themes or criteria when it's evaluating your application. And under that theme, you'll see track record of success, sense of personal direction, and realistic expectations for the MBA. Now, I think those are 2 really, really serious elements under that criteria. Not that the others aren't, but they fit directly into this idea that your goal counts. And I attended the AGAC conference in June at Booth, and the admissions committee emphasized that they seek self-aware applicants. And one of the consultants asked, what makes an application jump off the page for them? And the admissions committee responded, and I'm quoting, someone who demonstrates self-awareness, and based on what they've done, you know they will make a mark on the world, close quote. That's a sense of personal direction. They know where they've come from, they know where they're going, and they give the committee the confidence that they can actually get there. Now, a classic short-term MBA goal is function, what you want to do, and industry, and what you want to do it. And indeed, you'll find those questions asked right here. Let me actually get so you can see what I'm pointing at. Here we go. Right here, okay? On the bottom, what is your intended post-MBA industry? What is your intended post-MBA function? Up above that, and I think these 2 questions are really for statistical purposes. Up above that, you have two shorter questions. What is your immediate post-MBA goal with 250 characters maximum? And what is your long-term post-MBA goal? 250 characters maximum, followed by how will the Booth MBA help you achieve your immediate long-term post-MBA career goals? 250 word minimum. Now notice the first two were characters at a maximum, and this one is word minimum. You got to, that's really important. But the point is, the real point I'm trying to make is that your goals are really important to Booth, and how you intend to use the Booth experience to achieve your goals is extremely important just based on the amount of time they're giving you to discuss it. So how do you address this? Okay, when you're talking about the post-MBA career goal, what is your immediate post-MBA career goal, and you have 250 characters max, you don't want to just repeat what's in the boxes. You want to add a little bit to it. So you can talk about your motivation for this particular short-term goal. You can talk about perhaps very briefly experience that convinced you this is the right goal for you. And then the long-term goal, you don't want to, obviously you can say what it is because you're not saying that below, but you can also talk perhaps about a societal aspiration that you have for your goal or the impact you intend to have. And it can be fuzzier than the short-term goal. There's no problems with that. And the purpose of these two questions is to see if you have realistic yet ambitious goals. They don't want somebody who's just going to check the box kind of on a particular career path. They want somebody who's going to have a greater impact. Now, the long question here was a new question this year, and I think it's very revealing of what Booth values. How will the Booth MBA help you achieve your immediate and long-term post-MBA career goals? 250 word minimum. They're giving you a lot more room and clearly want to see your knowledge and enthusiasm for Booth. Booth is, and I'll say this in a later question, a choice-rich environment. The first page of the website says that it's the world's most flexible full-time MBA program. How do you intend to take advantage of Booth's flexible curriculum, various centers, and strengths to prepare yourself to go down the paths that you outline both in the 250 character questions, and then here's where you can really go into some depth. You don't have to go on about those goals anymore. It's just how is the Booth MBA going to help you achieve both of them? Booth asks explicitly about your goals in its application and may also ask in your interview, so review this before you go to interview. The key point here is that your application as a whole must allow the admissions committee to see how your previous education and experience, when combined with the Booth MBA, will allow you to achieve what you want to achieve. So you need both realistic goals and a sense of direction. So that's the second key. Showing them that the Booth MBA will take you where you want to go and that you know how to use it. Third key, show that you share Booth's values and can contribute to its community, the second of its three evaluation criteria. Now, Booth has what it calls the Chicago approach: analytical inquiry, intellectual freedom, collaborative community, and impact. This is a culture that starts with analytical inquiry and curiosity. It provides intellectual freedom to nurture that curiosity. At the same time, Booth claims, our community is intensely collaborative. So my comment is, check your ego before you apply. And it seeks people who have made an impact and will make an even greater impact in the future. Now let's unpack these values a little bit more, which summarize Booth's values. I mentioned several times, analytical inquiry is very much data-driven. And it takes a very rigorous approach to data analysis and will teach you how to use a variety of analytical tools. It values the questioning, challenging mind, what Booth calls intellectual curiosity. Look for opportunities to reveal the curiosity that animates rigorous inquiry as well as innovation. And also the questioning mind. So you have to be comfortable in an environment where you are going to be questioned and challenged. Who is Booth looking for? People who can handle ambiguity and intellectual freedom, who reflect a willingness to take responsibility for the decisions, specifically their higher education. It has a highly flexible curriculum. And you can take required courses in core areas at your level. So for example, accountants don't need to take basics of financial accounting. It has only one required course, Leadership Effectiveness and Development, or LEAD, which teaches key management skills such as negotiation, team building, and giving feedback, the so-called soft side of management. And the fact that the only required course is on leadership, I think really reflects the fact that leadership is extremely important at Booth, and it's the one thing that it wants all its graduates to take away from the experience. What does all this intellectual freedom imply to you as an applicant? You need to show you can handle it. How have you handled ambiguity and choice in the past? How have you handled debate in the past? Can you be friends with somebody that you just argued with about something? I mentioned in this morning's webinar that my father's closest friend was diametrically opposed to him politically. And they would get together. They were best friends. They got together almost every single week. And they would very happily argue and debate with their beliefs. They knew that they disagreed, and they were just fine with it. It's that kind of dynamic, I think, that Booth is looking for. And no, neither of them went to Chicago Booth or got an MBA. What does all this, how do you handle no word limits and the word minimums? Are you going to show judgment in regards to both? And the same with analytical inquiry or rigor. Have you used your knowledge or data and resulting insights to solve a problem, improve a process, innovate, initiate a project with impact? Any of those things any of those kinds of activities would be great to include in bullet points in your job descriptions, in interview responses to interview questions, or perhaps in an essay. Now, I'd like you at this point in the webinar to take a minute. You can use the back of the worksheet that I suggested you print out, or just a piece of paper. Take a minute and write down time when you demonstrated or engaged in critical analysis that led to change, intellectual freedom, or collaborative community. This is for you. You don't have to post it in the question window. But take a minute. Just think about it. Just jot down some notes for yourselves. Okay? I'm going to go on and issue a warning. You can listen to this in the back of your mind, but the notes are for you. Okay? There's a tremendous difference between mouthing platitudes like analytical inquiry, leadership, spitting back websites, and actually showing that you share the value. The former, the platitudes and the spit back, well, that's just putting lipstick on a pig, and frankly, it's just not very pretty. Spamming them with phrases from their website or mantra-like repetition of inquiry, insight, and impact, or culture of debate and questioning, that really won't do it. What you need to do is provide examples in essays, in your job description, in the bullet points in your resume. You can ask your recommenders to do the same, and then in responses to interview questions. In total, these should show that you both have what Booth is looking for and can benefit from what Booth offers. To me, Booth is all about assuming responsibility in the face of ambiguity and risk, which is probably what business is all about too. It's about questioning and analyzing, but also about making a difference. And that means you don't have to spit back phrases at all. Another warning, if you focus on rankings and brand, you're going to obscure the fit aspect of admissions, and that means you're focusing on the wrong things. Yes, I know Booth is highly ranked, but if you focus on its rankings, you're going to blend in and bore. Booth knows what it ranks. You have to figure out what is the connection between Booth and the achievement of your goals, and you and the culture at Booth, not where it ranks. You want to stand out in a positive way. You want to show that you have the distinctive experience and perspective to contribute to the Booth community. And Booth has lots of applicants and can be choosy. With current application volume, it rejects more than 3 out of every 4 applicants, which is actually slightly better. It's a slightly higher acceptance rate than many of its peer institutions, but still very tough competition. And that leads to my last key and last strategic point. You need to demonstrate that you'll be able to contribute to the Booth community something distinctive and ultimately make the school proud to have you as an alum. Now, Booth talks about revealing a track record of success professionally and philanthropic tendencies through your essay, resume, activity history, interview, letters of recommendation, etc. And you need to show that you are a person with an inquiring mind who draws insights from inquiry and then acts on the insights and has an impact. So what I'd like to do now, and this is I'd like you to do in the question window, is where have you made an impact? Like you tell me sometimes when you have made a difference in the question window. Anybody want to share when you've made an impact and difference? I provide strategic consulting work to nonprofits. Okay, good, Rohan. Can you quantify an impact you had? Have you guided nonprofits to either greater contribution to society or to raising more money? Something along those lines. In other words, that's what you do. I'm asking more about what you've achieved, where you've made a difference. Mentoring students for the CFA challenge. Good. How many students that have you mentored and how many have passed? Okay, here's another one from Rohan. Took a nonprofit that focused on helping feed insecure college students from relying on grants to a more sustainable business model. Okay, again, I'd like some numbers there. You don't have to post it here if you're not comfortable doing so. But if you really want to show impact, did you take 3 college students, 300 college students, 3,000 college students? And what was the business model? Again, it may not be appropriate for you to go into detail here. It was 5 students. I was mentoring 5 students for the CFA challenge. Okay, if they passed, you want to say so. Again, you want to show that you made a difference, not just what you did. What was the impact and the outcome of what you did? It's a big difference. Here are some other examples that I thought of. Captained your tennis team to its first championship in 10 years. Organized a team to run in a marathon and raised X thousands of dollars for your favorite charity. Or took over as team lead when your team lead suddenly became ill and managed to finish the project on time and under budget, and then were requested by the client to be the team lead on the next project. That's something I made up. Here's one from Anthony. Led multiple on-site building crews on the construction of 3 homes, Habitat for Humanity. Okay, that's better. So then we have 3 homes. I'd also like to know how many people were on the crews. Okay, that would again indicate greater leadership. Okay, numbers vary. All right, shopping numbers vary. Serve a community of 14,000 students, 7% of which were shown to be food insecure. All right, but when you start talking about 14,000 students, then we're talking big numbers and impact. All right. Five to 12 on the team. Good, Anthony. So that would help. Okay, let's move on. Thank you. Now, I want to touch on work experience here for a minute. There are really 2 axes in terms of examining work experience, and we touched on it a little bit even in this example, little exercise that I did. The first one is quantity. That is the average amount of work experience at Booth is 5 years. The second axis is quality, right? What is qualitatively competitive work experience at Booth? Well, it needs to show leadership, commitment to analytical rigor, curiosity, and the impact that Booth values, or at least some of those qualities. And above average progression on the job, which I believe somebody mentioned at the very beginning of the webinar as something that Booth would be looking for, I think correctly so. So that's what makes impressive, competitive, I should say, work experience at Booth. Now, I'd like to show you how presentation of what you do can really help you show that you're going to contribute distinctively to to your class by, again, through a little exercise here, right? So I'm going to post a poll. Please indicate which of the following applies to you, and you can choose more than one option, right? I work in consulting or financial services. I have traveled outside my home country. I have volunteered during and or since college. Okay. All right, we have 87% having voted. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm going to close the poll and share the poll. And here are the results. 43% of you work in consulting or financial services. 86% have traveled outside your home country. 81% have volunteered during and or since college. All right, so we're going to hide this. And next one, this is the last one. I work for Facebook. I went trekking in Patagonia. I volunteered in North Carolina after the devastating hurricane, or none of the above. Okay. We have a clear winner here. With 78% of you having voted, can we get it up over 80%? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Actually, we're at 91%. You're at 95%. 91% voted. 95% of those who voted say that none of the above applies to me. I don't even see anybody. Should be 100%. But in any case, okay, in the morning we had a few people who'd gone trekking in Patagonia. We had 5%. So, but otherwise, nobody had worked for Facebook. Nobody had volunteered in North Carolina. What's the difference between the two sets of questions? In the question window, please. What's the difference? Focused, okay. More specific, exactly, Anthony. They're more specific, they're more focused, much more specific. What happens when I talk in general terms about financial services and volunteering and travel outside the home country, as opposed to Facebook, Patagonia, and the hurricanes in North Carolina? What happens? You won't be able to stand out if you talk in general terms. It stands out less. Exactly. Exactly. You guys are on it. But if you're specific, then what happens? Assuming it applies to you. You do stand out. Exactly. That's right. You stand out. And that's the point. So when you describe what you do, are you going to be an engineer or a transportation engineer? Are you going to be a consultant or a healthcare consultant? Are you going to work in high tech or specifically be an electrical engineer focusing on chip technology or something equally focused but different? Now, why is distinctive contribution important? Well, there's one big reason it's important. And that is, number one, Booth says so. It wants people with a unique perspective and a track record of success. And that success tends to be not quite as general. And number two, because Booth, like all elite MBA programs, has too many qualified applicants. 22.9% acceptance rate, as I mentioned earlier. And the implication from that very low acceptance rate, even though it's somewhat higher than peer institutions, is that Booth has no reason to admit someone without something distinctive to contribute. No benefit to accepting someone lacking a history of leadership and growth in multiple arenas, a record of past impact and contribution. Even at a data-driven program like Booth, it's not just about the numbers. Now, let's review the 4 strategic steps you need to think about before and while putting your application together. The first key, show you can do the work. The second, have a clear, realistic idea why you want an MBA from Booth and how you intend to use it. 3, show that you share Booth's values and meet its criteria, and at the same time would fit into its community. And 4, demonstrate that you'll be able to contribute to Booth's community, have the impact that they seek, and ultimately make the school proud. Now let's look at a few specific elements of the Booth application. I already touched on grades and transcripts as well as Booth's values. Let's look at some other elements, starting with the resume, the job and activity history and the resume. You need to make the most of the 1 to 2 page resume to show impact and contribution, and that you belong at an institution that is proud of its inquisitive, analytical culture. For Booth, the job history gives you a wee bit of room to elaborate on your work experience. In the job history, you have 700 characters, approximately 140 words, to describe each job, and 50 words to describe the reason for leaving any previous jobs. The best reason, by the way, is a promotion, greater responsibility. Okay. In the job description, focus on inquiry, insight, and impact, especially the latter. Again, if you think about the exercise we did a few minutes ago, I said, what difference did you make? Don't just describe your responsibilities or tasks. Describe the outcome, the results of your being there. For Booth, relate achievements, not mere descriptions or responsibilities. Quantify your impact whenever possible, and you only have a small space. You have to be succinct. The second of Booth's 3 criteria is community, and Booth asks you to list all community service activities. For details on exactly what they want, see their instructions. But you'll see that they allow you to list academics, athletics, business development, community service, cultural or social organizations, the arts, professional organizations, religious organizations. There's lots of things that you can include. Also realize that involvement and activity is active. They're not talking about you having membership in an organization where the membership card sits in your wallet and that's about it, or you sometimes show up at meetings just to say you showed up. They're talking about assumption of responsibility, participation, and leadership. That's what they really want to see. And community service is a great place for you to show that you have the leadership and the teamwork, interpersonal skills, not to mention initiative, that Booth seeks. Now, the real heavy lifting in this section is an essay in a box. And that is Chicago Booth immerses you in a choice-rich environment. How have your interests, leadership experiences, and other passions influenced the choices in your life? And again, we're talking now not in characters, but in words. It's a 250-word minimum. In my view, this is a non-professional essay. They want to see a thoughtful, self-aware discussion of how your interests, leadership experience, and passions have influenced you. Not just, check this box, but how you've learned from them, how you've grown from them. So, you need to have such experiences and interests. In terms of how to approach the essay, if you can, tell a story. It's more engaging than a treatise on, leadership or whatever, analytical inquiry, whatever. Tell the story of how some experience you had influenced the decisions in your life. Again, how you grew from the experience. Booth also has an optional additional information essay and says, is there any unclear information in your application that needs further explanation? If so, please use this section to clarify. So what in your application could confuse a reader or cause them to draw the wrong and probably unwanted conclusion? One of the obvious ones, and we're going to get to that in a minute, is why isn't your current supervisor writing your letter of recommendation? Other possibilities could be context for events listed in your resume or activity list. In other words, you list an achievement, but the achievement is much greater if they get a little background on it. It could be a challenge you faced in achieving what you've achieved. It could be a dip in grades or a gap in your employment. But don't waste their time rehashing material already discussed elsewhere or writing about insignificant events. They'll see that you're padding. They're not going to be impressed by it. They probably will be annoyed because you're wasting their time. What about recommenders and recommendations? Booth wants 2 letters of recommendation, and I have 2 criteria for choosing recommenders. They ask that the first recommendation be from your current supervisor, but understand if you're not comfortable asking a current supervisor. If you don't ask, explain it in the optional information. The second letter can be professional in nature or from an organization, club, or volunteer project with which you are associated. They are seeking different perspectives on your skills from people who can assess your strengths and weaknesses. My 2 criteria for asking recommenders are, 1, you want to ask people who know you well, who can Assess your qualifications based on their personal experience supervising you. And 2, you want to ask them if they can write a strong, positive letter of recommendation. If they hesitate, either because they don't have the time to do so or because they don't have quite as high opinion of you as you thought they did, move on, ask somebody else. And in talking to your recommenders, I'd also suggest that you suggest that they read the 10 tips here and encourage, because these tips, and you can encourage them to write in specifics, to provide concrete examples, to focus on leadership, analytical inquiry, teamwork, innovation, and impact. Booth will also ask why you chose these recommenders. Answer that question succinctly and straightforwardly, but give some sense of the nature of your professional relationship with your recommenders, and if possible, their experience with pre-MBA types or ability to evaluate leaders or people with the qualities Booth seeks. Finally, don't go for the mucky-muck 4 or 5 levels above you who last shook your hand on the Christmas party a year ago. Don't be seduced by title in choosing your recommenders. Choose people who know you well and are close to you in terms of their supervision. Let's move on to the interview. What can you expect at the Booth interview if you're lucky enough to be invited? It's conducted by admissions staff, students, or alumni. It's a blind interview. The interviewer will only have access to your resume. Booth's advice in an online chat for the interview was be authentic, transparent, and have a thorough understanding of why you wish to go to Booth. Remember that second key of mine. It's coming up again and again. I think it's a theme. I think it's important to them. Know how you intend to use the Booth experience and education to achieve your goals. Know what appeals to you about the Booth community and approach to the MBA education. How should you prepare? Well, first of all, know the Booth website, the program really, really well. Also, review the GMAT Club and Beat the GMAT threads before you interview, so you might see some interview feedback, perhaps questions that were asked. Prepare to explore your past to show fit with Booth's values and criteria. And review your application before you interview. Since this is a blind interview and the interview will not have seen what you wrote, the material in your application might be great to use in the interview. I would also suggest that you don't limit yourself to your application. Be prepared to explore your past experiences to show fit with Booth's values and criteria. And this URL, and again, we are going to send it out, provides the curriculum, community, and career, and also what are the subheadings under that. Now, I like to advise people in preparing for an MBA interview to be ambidextrous. In other words, if you are asked, can you tell us about a leadership experience, or tell us about, then you should be able to obviously be prepared with leadership experiences. Be prepared to show the qualities that Booth values through your experiences, but also be prepared to discuss experiences and be able to draw out of them the kinds of qualities that Booth values. So, for example, if you're asked for a failure experience, right? Be prepared to show how you learned, let's say, how to disagree agreeably from the experience where you were not able to do so, and then give an example of how you did better. Just be prepared to go both ways. Again, if you're asked for an experience that demonstrates certain qualities, you have it ready. If you're asked a more open-ended question where it's not obviously tied to Booth's criteria and values, be prepared to have an experience ready, or the experiences that you want them to know about ready, and be able to draw out of that experience the qualities that Booth values. In terms of how to do this, what I would do is jot down a few achievements and experiences and write down for yourself just some of the qualities they reveal, and also write down specific qualities that Booth values, analytical inquiry, etc., impact, and put next to those qualities experiences. So again, just be prepared to go both directions. And then prepare questions to ask about Booth, especially if you're being interviewed by an alum or a current student. You can ask about their experience at Booth. Just make sure that the questions you ask are not answered on the home page of the website. Now let's go back to your goal, submitting an application to Booth. Show that you belong at Booth. And we're going to have a little contest here. The first two to get and again, it's based solely on what's been discussed. The first two to get the answer right will have a free consultation with me. Okay, 15-minute consultation. The question is, are your fingers poised over the keyboard? What are the 3 C's of Booth's criteria as they evaluate your application? Okay. Darren and Peter, you got it. Darren and Peter, you got it. Curriculum, community, career. I don't really care about the order of them. And I don't really think they care too much either. All right, congratulations. Rachel, you got the names and we'll be in touch and you'll be able to schedule a call with me. All right. Let's go through the 4 keys one last time before we go to the Q&A. Show you belong at Booth by showing you can do the work. Having a realistic, clear goal that requires a Booth MBA, showing that you share Booth's values and meet its criteria, and demonstrating that you'll be able to contribute distinctively to class discussions and teamwork, the school's community, and ultimately make the school proud. A final word of advice and warning. The admissions committee readers are sharp, intelligent professionals. Don't try to trick, fake, or fool. The best presentation of you is an authentic reflection of your achievements and dreams, keeping in mind the 4-part framework that will make Booth want you. Now, Accepted wants to help you show that you belong at Booth. In this webinar, I've given you a comprehensive approach to getting accepted to Chicago Booth. I've also given you the reason each part of the 4-part framework, which works for all top MBA programs, is necessary for acceptance. What I can't give you is the how of applying this framework to your individual situation, helping you to produce that authentic reflection of your unique dreams and achievements. That begs for individual advising with an experienced, accepted MBA admissions professional. We want to guide you in showing that you both belong at Chicago Booth or other MBA programs that you're aiming for and stand out in the applicant pool. And we have advised thousands of successful MBA applicants over 20+ years in business to create applications that accomplish everything we've discussed here today. And we know it's not easy. You're juggling work, life, family, community service, and applications. It's hard to know where to apply and how to apply efficiently. We understand. We've been there many, many times over the past 20+ years with thousands of clients. You see on the screen what you get to when you work with Accepted. You access expertise and experience, reduce your stress, save time, fix mistakes before they hurt, and show you belong at Chicago Booth. Now, some may say that Accepted seems expensive. Accepted, it's definitely not a cheap service because of the quality of our staff, but our fees are peanuts compared to the cost of an MBA. Furthermore, there are expensive and less obvious risks associated with not using Accepted. Reapplication can easily cost a few $1,000s. One additional year of pre-MBA earnings can cost in the 5 figures in dollars. And then there's the potential that you apply, you get in, but you could have gotten into a better program with lifelong higher earnings and network. And I'll let you calculate the cost of that. Now, every year, we work with applicants who talked to us a year earlier and decided after taking the do-it-yourself approach and getting rejected, they wanted to work with us a second time around. We welcome that. But you know what? They would have been better working with us the year earlier, and so would you. But enough from me. What do acceptance clients say? I want to thank you, Esmeralda, for all your help. I couldn't have done it without you. Or on the lower left, I'm really happy. I would like to thank Jennifer once again for her wonderful guidance, without which this would not have been possible. Accepted to Wharton and Booth. And the third one, whoops, too fast there. I want to drop a quick note that I've been accepted to Wharton, Booth, and Yale this year for MBA admissions. I want to thank you for your firm's terrific advice, and particularly send my appreciation to Natalie, who has absolutely been the most fantastic MBA admissions consultant I have worked with. Here's what I'd like you to do after the Q&A. It is now December 5th. We can still work with you on your booth applications for the round 2 deadline, which is January 3rd. Contact us ASAP, and we'd be delighted to help you from scratch or review and edit your essays or your resume, whatever part you want us to look at. Our goal is to guide you so that you present all 4 parts of the critical framework discussed today and show that you both belong at Chicago Booth and are a standout in the applicant pool. Take the steps that you see on the screen to work with an accepted MBA admissions consultant and have the kind of experience and success that the clients you just heard from have had. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, and I'm going to mention it again, that we have a special for webinar registrants. This is not found on the site. $100 off any non-rush MBA service over $1,000. Coupon code MBA100, and the URL is accepted.com/MBA services. This ends December 10th. Time is of the essence at this point. And now I'm happy to take your questions. So let's see, in terms of questions, what we have here. Is it possible for your goals to be too ambitious? It probably is possible. I once talked to somebody who said that he wants to be president of, I think, some major corporation, I think in 10 years. And it wasn't, I want to be, CEO of a company like this major corporation. It was, I want to be president of this particular company. 10 years for that kind of responsibility is probably a little unrealistic. So I think when is too ambitious is probably when you get unrealistic. If you can see a path for achieving your goal in the time frame that you give, then you're not being unrealistic and you're not setting too ambitious a goal. If you also talk in terms of the impact you want to have, then you're probably also still okay. Okay. Thanks for the question. Does taking leadership courses online like EDX and earning a certificate help with the application? It's not as effective as actually showing leadership, and taking courses can really help if you have a low GPA, but then I would still recommend more traditional courses to show that you know how to perform in a traditional academic environment. So I'm not sure that leadership courses, online leadership courses, are going to, in and of themselves, help you with your MBA application. They may make you a better leader, so you have greater impact, and therefore help you, but it's an indirect kind of assistance. But thanks for the question. Okay, should you list the volunteer activities you participated in with your coworkers through work? Yes. Yes. I mean, again, there has to be some. You're asking me in a bit of a vacuum here. My initial indication is yes. I would say if they were insignificant, your involvement was minimal, the outcome was minimal, probably no. But if you gave significant time and there was some notable outcome, then yes, absolutely. Just try and define what your role was. Let's see, what else do we have here? This is from Darren. How does traveling for work or pleasure fit into the application? Well, travel shows initiative. If it's abroad, it shows inquiring mind. It shows exposure to different cultures, and it's generally a good thing. Depends how much travel you did, for how long, and where you went, etc. But those are the basics that travel shows. And if it's important to you, you definitely want to include it in your application. If it was less important, then I wouldn't, you don't feel compelled to. It could make a great springboard for your response to Essay 2. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Okay, so here we have from Chris. Regarding the community portion of an application, what if you don't have much community work that you were able to demonstrate leadership? For example, if I was the captain of a cycling team that raised money in support of an organization such as the American Cancer Society, how strong is that? Well, I mean, it would probably depend a little bit. Thank you for the question, Chris. On how much money you raised. That would be how big was the team. Those would all influence how important or impressive that activity would be. And then there's the simple fact that you bicycled X miles and obviously trained for it and all that. I would say that it is probably worth mentioning, and it probably is a demonstration of leadership. But do you hear where I'm coming from? That I mean, if you raise $10, I don't think I would mention it. If you raise $10,000, yeah, sure. That's already impressive. So what else do we have here? All right, Peter asks, you touched on this briefly, but if we are currently sitting with a GMAT score below the 80th percentile, does taking and achieving in a graduate level statistics course help offset the lower GMAT score? How much lower is it, Peter? 60th percentile. Yes, I think that would help. I mean, the one thing you want to do is make sure you're taking a course that you can do well in. In other words, if you don't have the background for graduate statistics courses, then don't take it. Take the statistics course that you think you can do well in, that you have the prerequisites for. A CFA is a very credible evidence that you know how to apply yourself. And are you dealing, Darren, with a low GPA or a low GMAT? Well, I guess I'm going to talk to you so we can discuss this one on our call, right? You won the call, correct? Okay. Yes. Okay. So we'll discuss that. You can bring that up on the call. And Anthony asked, okay. When undergoing an industry change, where is the line drawn between unrealistic goals and ambitious? For example, is moving from technology consulting to financial services acceptable in the eyes of the admissions committee? Yes. I would think that you'd be wiser to move to financial services focused on technology, because that will take advantage of whatever you've done in the past. But business schools, by admission, but when I talked about being too ambitious, I didn't mean a career change or career shift. I meant that you wanted to find the cure for cancer, save the whales, whatever, reverse climate change. Those are all wonderful goals, but they're probably not something that you alone can achieve as a result of your Booth MBA. So anyway, that's okay. Did I answer your question, Anthony? You're welcome. All right. So at this point, I would like to thank you very much for coming, for your questions, your time, your attention. And I have a final thought and story I'd like to share with you. The thought, there is a paradox at the heart of the MBA application process for top programs like Booth. And I've alluded to it, but I haven't really highlighted like I'm going to do now. You have to fit in and stand out. By fitting in, I mean that you belong at the target school. In this case, Chicago Booth, like a hand in glove. And that is in terms of your goals, your academics, your work experiences, and values. You're going to be a valuable member of Booth's community. That's part 1 through 3 of the framework you've learned today. And then there's the standing out part. You need to stand out in a highly qualified, intensely competitive, and talented applicant pool. That's part 4 of my framework, the 4th key. You need to show that you're going to contribute distinctively, that unique perspective, that to add something a little special to the community, perhaps a higher level of achievement, an unusual background, again, a different perspective, to get a little poetic. Admissions committees look at their class like a mosaic or a needlepoint, and each thread or stone, in the word student, has to add a distinctive shade or color. There's no need to navigate this paradox alone. We're here to guide you to acceptance. And here's the story of one client, this one from a client who came to us very frustrated and discouraged. I want to take a moment to let you know how great of an experience I've had working with Natalie. The first company I spoke with was an absolute disaster. Whoops, here we go. My conversation with Natalie was completely different. Natalie was friendly, warm, and encouraging. We talked about the strengths and weaknesses of my profile, and she eventually recommended that my reach school from the other consultant should be my backup school. While I still haven't fully decided on which school I'm going to attend, I have options available to me in top 20 programs with major scholarships, and I likely will be taking a spot at Booth, something that I never thought would be possible when I first started looking at MBA programs. I can't emphasize how great of an asset Natalie has been, and I will definitely be recommending her to anyone I know who's looking to apply to business school. Now, this fellow was an Indian male applicant. When he first contacted us, he had a 650 GMAT. He retook, as we advised, and he did very well. And then he also had other things going for him that allowed him to get accepted. Now, if you want a reliable guide on this journey who will kindly give you insightful, trustworthy, and necessary feedback to help you get into your favorite schools and pursue your dream career, follow the steps on the screen, which are the steps taken by all the clients you've heard from. You've heard from several clients who sought acceptance help and successfully navigated the paradox I just talked to you about all the way to acceptance. They applied confidently and successfully. They're now pursuing their dreams. Follow their well-trodden path and take the steps on the screen as they did and pursue yours too.